Okay, folks, today we are going to be looking through how to create a beautiful donut chart for the next section of our animation. And it is going to look something like this. For the average household, that's 14% of total income per child. So essentially, we just have some of the elements popping on the same way that we had for the line graph that we looked at last time, but then we are also looking at how to have some of these like donut chart elements grow out of the chart here to demonstrate the percentage of income that this is. So we actually already have all the skills that we need to do something like this, but it's helpful to go through and take a look at how to accomplish that, just because there's a little more to it than using trace paths to make the chart grow the same way we did with the line chart. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new composition, call this graph 2 donut example. I'm going to drag in my audio file here, and I'll just shorten this down to where I know we're working. So because we have our notes in here, I can see that this is where this part of each kind of like cue of where I want an animation to happen is going to occur throughout this. So we have that. Let's go ahead and add in a background layer, or actually let's drag in a reference photo just so that we are following along with the exact kind of composition that we want. And this is why it's helpful to work on these in your design boards so that you have those references to pull into After Effects. That way you're not trying to compose and animate at the exact same time. I took this as a screenshot from the original one that I did, just as a quick tip for how you can do that. So I'm back on my example composition. If you go up to composition, you can go down to save frame as, Photoshop layers, and it will basically export that screen that you're looking at. So I can name this reference, save it on my desktop. And then when I come over here, I can actually open up my desktop, pull in that reference to as footage into my assets, and then you can see that I can drag this onto here and reference this as I'm working. And it would be helpful if we scaled this from the corner. That way we get a nice, even 100% example of this. And this exported it, I think it was like 50%, which is why this looks low resolution. But for our purposes, this works just fine. So I am going to turn down the opacity here by hitting T on my keyboard. You can also untwirl this to get here. But I'm just going to turn this down a little bit so I can leave this layer on top, but still know what I'm looking at. And then I'm going to lock it. Actually, first, let's turn that all the way up just so we can get an accurate color match for our background layer that we're going to add in. So I'm going to double click on my rectangle tool to get a full size rectangle in here, and then I'm going to change the fill color of that to the fill color of this background that I actually want. So now that I will put on the bottom. I will go ahead and rename this to background, and then can turn this opacity back down a little bit and lock that. And then, oops, that's not what I want to move. Let's lock that too. Move this background back up to fill the screen. It would also be easier, instead of trying to click and drag stuff around, if we just used our alignment tools. So that would be working smarter, not harder, like I tell you guys to normally. Okay, background layer's there and locked. I'm going to shy that. I'm also going to shy our reference photo for a second. And then just to clean up our workspace, let's go ahead and fit this to the size of our screen and let's get working. So we essentially want to create this final composition, and then just like we did before, we'll go back and kind of animate things on here. I'm going to work on the donut chart first because this is the new part of this. We've already looked at kind of the importance of timing and creating a little bit of bounce for scaling our text elements onto here, and you know how to do a trace path for something like this line. So I'll go through these, but I'm going to go through the donut chart first. So here is how I would approach this. I'm going to grab my rectangle or my ellipse tool, and I'm holding Command to scale this from the center of my click, and I'm holding Shift to scale it proportionally. So I'm going to go ahead and make, relatively close to that size. I'm going to hold Option and click to make this a stroke instead of nothing over here, and then I'm going to turn off the fill because we actually want this to be a stroke around the outside of that line. Now you could do this by masking out the center of the circle, but the reason we're going to do it with a stroke is because we are going to use that trace paths animation, and that's how we're going to grow this donut chart. So let's turn our reference back up just to get the color of our shape. And in fact, I will go ahead and let's get that scaled the way we want it to. Let's get this scaled to the right size. And in fact, I'm going to change this to kind of a weird color just so we can see it. And then I'm going to use that trick with the transparency again so that I can get an accurate guess at the sizing here. So I'm shooting for kind of the center of this, and then I'm just going to scale that up, and that's really close. I could spend some more time on this to get it perfect, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to make this a nice round number and call it a day for the demo. Okay, so that's the right size. I'm going to change this to that gray for our base layer. And then I'm actually going to make some copies of this for the other two colors here. But let's go ahead and center our anchor point there so that when we make copies of this, they're all nice and kind of organized. I'm going to rename this donut base because it's the bottom kind of base of our chart. And then I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate it. And then on this new copy, I'm going to make this the dark blue color for our first section. Name this donut dark blue. Let's go ahead and do that again. Same thing for this medium blue. And then let's do it one more time for that light blue. Okay, perfect. So with all these selected, I'm going to go ahead and move them over here where we want them to be. And let's get to work animating these. So I'm going to hide the other few layers here. And in fact, it would probably make more sense to do the animation on one of them first before duplicating it. That way it's kind of copied to the other layers of the chart as we go, but this is okay for now. So I'm going to select my donut chart. I do want to see that one, and I'm just going to hide some of this other nonsense for now. So let's hide our reference. And now, let me also go ahead and shy some of these other layers so you can see what I am working on here. So now I just have my base donut chart here. So if I untwirl this and I go ahead and add a trim paths option here, we're working with kind of the same thing that we were on the line chart. So if I open that trim paths, I can animate this endpoint, and this is how we're going to get our chart to grow out from that starting point. So we're going to end at 100%. So I can say, you know, I don't know, let's just for now set this at half a second. And then make the starting keyframe that 0%. And now when we play this, you can see that that grows around. So we could ease this just to make it a little more lively. Keyframe assistant. In fact, I think I want this to, ease in is what we want here, just so it's fast at first and it slows down at the end. And that looks pretty good. We could speed that up, and I would match that up with the audio here. But this is the basic concept, is we're going to get our base layer on here. Then let me unshy these other layers. And we can take that same idea, and I could just duplicate this and change the color. But since we already put these in here, let's see if we can paste the trim path onto here. It looks like that worked. So now you will see, if we unhide this, the dark blue one doing the same thing. If I move that over, you can see that they're both animating at the same time. Now, the key here is this blue portion of the chart, we actually don't want to animate all the way around. And we want it to happen slightly later than the base layer, because we want to see the base come on, and then it's going to continue to grow, you know, those percentages. But this blue portion, we are saying that this is 14% of that total median income. So we actually don't want our final endpoint here to be 100. We want this to be 14% of that total line. And so now this represents 14% of the total income. So that is great here. Now, how are we going to make this work for the other two 14 percentages that we are saying are, you know, layering that 14% per child? So in order to get those to grow out from this section, we actually need to rotate these other two circles, or else they're going to animate on the same spot as we have this dark blue one. So let's paste that trim path for now. So you can see the issue here. Now, the key to this is we are going to rotate this by that 14% of the total circle. So we need to have our anchor point in the center here. And I'm going to go to my rotation by hitting R for this medium blue circle. And I'm going to let After Effects do some of the math for me by typing, 360 degrees is one full rotation, but I'm going to multiply it by 0.14 for the 14%. So I can actually type that math right into After Effects. And you can see that gives us a perfect rotation of this circle, and you can tell by the diagonal selection path it's giving us, right to the end of this one. And we can do the same thing for this other one here. So if I paste the trim paths, you can see our trim path is there. And this would give us that light blue on the same spot, but we are going to rotate this one by 28%, which is, double 14. So we're going to type in 360 here, and then my asterisk for multiply, and then 0.28. And that's going to get us right to the end over here. So now I'm hitting U on my keyboard just to, and if I deselect some stuff, this would work better. Just to clean up what I'm looking at here to only what I have keyframes on. I'm going to go ahead and unshy those charts we're working with and kind of hide everything else. And then I'm going to select those and hit U so that we can take a look at all of these keyframes at once. So we have the base chart growing on over here, and I think right when that gets to the end, I want the start of the next chart to start, and then I think I want these to each follow each other. So as soon as we hit the end of that blue chart, or the dark blue, then the next one starts, and then obviously the light blue, we want it to be last. So let's see how this looks for now. So I actually think that's a little bit slow. And in fact, I don't know if I like the easing on that, because we're easing out from that motion. What's happening is, for example, this dark portion of the chart is slowing down towards the end, and then the next portion is speeding up. That doesn't really make a lot of sense if we think about this in terms of like physics or realistic motion. If we're thinking about this as a continuous movement, there's momentum that would continue through this part of the line. And so I think for these portions of the chart, I actually don't want those to be eased. I don't mind it on that the base layer, but I think on these ones, I'm going to take off the easing. So let's go back to, not easy ease, let's go ahead and open the chart. That way we can select all these. And I'm just going to convert these back to linear. And that way they all move at a constant speed. So let's take a look at that. I'll set my endpoint here so that it loops maybe. There we go. Okay, so still a little slow, so I'm going to select these here, and I'm just going to go ahead and transform the whole selection. Not too bad, still a little slow for my taste. That's a little better. In fact, I'm going to take that easing off the base layer too, because it slows down at the end here and that motion looks continuous. I've decided I don't like it there either. So let's select that. Let's go ahead and find our trim paths here. And let's go ahead and convert that to linear. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So if you just need to get a donut chart, that's kind of the end here. I'm going to go through the other parts of this just so that we're consistent with showing the whole process. But this is essentially, again, just working with that trim paths to trace the stroke onto the path and using that end value as the thing that we are animating. Okay, so let's get out of our chart here. Let's go back to kind of our full composition, or the end result of where we want to go. I'm going to take a look at my reference again, make sure that that's not at 100%. And that it's locked. And let's start to get some of this text on here. So I'm going to grab my text tool, and I'm going to create a layer here that says median income. Sure would be a lot easier to see if it wasn't that light blue. So let's change that color. And then you can see that this is, we're not using that sans serif here, we're actually using the italic source serif in bold. So it should be bold italic, which is down here. And then I think we're closer to 60 points there. Let's go ahead and center this. Let's make sure it's centered in the frame, and then we can nudge this down a little bit. That's pretty close. We probably have this let in closer to an even 100%, so 60 points. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that layer because I think that this dollar value down here, this 6,215, is the same size, it's just a different typeface. It's that sans serif. So we're going to go 6215, and then I'm going to change this to sort sans bold. And that's looking just about perfect. I'm going to duplicate that again to get our per child value down here, and I know that's much smaller. So let's guess at half the size maybe. And I don't think that it's bold. So let's go per child, and I think that was a good guess. That's pretty close. I'm just going to zoom in here to get a little more accurate. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my dollar value again to get this 14%. And that's somewhere in between that 60 and 30, so let's call that, I don't know, 45, and probably a lightweight, regular weight. Yeah, regular perhaps. Oops, I just scaled that. Could be like a medium or semi-bold. Let's go with medium, just so it's visible. So our composition's coming together. The last thing is I'm going to grab my pen tool, and I'm going to change the color here to this dark blue and go down to something like, I don't know, 2 pixels for this kind of trace out line. Let's see if that's about the right width. It needs to be a little thicker. Okay, that looks pretty good. I just want to make sure that my text is like aligned in a sensible way to that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point in that layer contents, and then I could drag out a ruler here and place it on that annotation line just to make sure that this is kind of perfectly aligned there, and then get rid of that ruler when I'm done with it. All right, so if I hide my reference photo now, let's take a look at how this is looking. So let's go to Fit. That's looking pretty good to me. Okay, so the first thing that I want to happen before that donut grows on is I want my median income and my the actual value for that to pop up. So I am going to grab these animated layers and just push them back a little bit so that we can get that text to animate on first. And then I will come to our median income. That's the first thing that's going to come up. And I'm going to hit S on the keyboard to start animating the scale of this. And we know that we want it to end up at 100%, what we've put here. And then maybe just a frame or two before it, we want it to be at something like 102%, so we get that little bit of bounce where it's like overshooting the size. And at the very start, it's animating up from 0%. So that's a little slow. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. This is all going to happen pretty fast. Okay, that's a bit better in terms of speed. I am going to ease this. Just so it has a little bit of bounce. And we'll do the same thing, just staggered a little bit for the these other values that are coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and over to my dollar value, and I'm going to have this kind of start right after the median income starts. That way the I is, guided to this and then guided to this. So maybe right at here is where we have that scaling happen. Maybe a little bit earlier, something like that. And I'm going to have that per child animate at the same time as the median income. So that's pretty good. Except this is scaling from this point down here, so I definitely want to make sure that I'm centering that anchor point in the layer contents so that's not scaling from a weird spot. That one's good. 14 we already did. I'm going to go ahead and paste these keyframes in here, even though we know that's not coming up until later, until after that 14% mark comes out. So I'm going to paste those here. And then we know the per child one happens kind of after this pops on, so we'll have to scooch those keyframes a bit. Okay, let's see where we're at now. And then I'm going to go ahead and give myself some more room to look at these layers. Let's go ahead and hide some of this stuff. So this is where per child happens. So we know that this is where we want those second to 14% portions of the donut chart to animate on. So I'm going to look at the dark blue and the medium blue here, and I'm going to go ahead and scooch those keyframes over to where I say per child. And then we have the donut chart, so this pops on. We definitely want, probably after the median income dollar amount pops on, do we want the base of that chart? And then as soon as the base of that chart animates on, we want that first portion here to animate on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those keyframes as well, scooch those back. Right about there. That start still seems slow to me for the base of it. So we're going to scooch these back to right there. Okay, that's looking a little better. We still need to take care of that trace paths and the, oops, what happened to our medium blue? Looks like that didn't scooch back to, or we accidentally moved our light blue perhaps. Because we want that to happen right here. And then I think I want that line to start animating as soon as the dark blue fills in. So let's go ahead and grab that. I'm going to name that annotation line. And then let's add a trim paths to that. We know we want it to start here, so I'm going to add a keyframe to the end there. This doesn't need to take very long. I'm going to add another one there, and we'll start from 0. And then at the end of that is where that 14% can pop on. So let's just go ahead and grab those keyframes, scooch them back here, see how that's looking. pretty good. I think these per child ones could be spaced out a little bit more. Oops. Okay, I'm going to turn the audio on and take a look at that. So, toggle that. Hopefully this doesn't glitch out and keep repeating itself. Let's see.
For the average household, that's 14% of total income per child.
So I think I actually need a marker where it says 14% because that's where I want that to pop up. So I'm going to unlock that. Let's unroll this. Let's go down to the audio and the waveforms.
For the average household, that's
Goodness gracious. Okay, so we know it's that waveform. Okay, why aren't you showing that to us? There we go. So this is where we want 14% to come on. So I could drag a marker out here, but because I know where this is, I'm just going to move this to that playhead for now. So 14% should start here, which means the line should animate a little bit before. Let's take a look at that.
For the average household, that's 14% of total income per child. Is it?
Okay, so that's pretty good. It's not quite as polished as the initial version that I was showing you, but for the sake of kind of going through the motions here, I'm not going to make you sit around and watch me like polish up everything. But from here on out, it's just a matter of kind of the timing there. But we have everything that we need to animate it onto the screen, and it syncs up with the audio pretty well. So, okay, I hope that was helpful. I will see you in the next one where we will polish up a third line chart. We're just adding another annotation onto it, and then we will conclude this animation.